I'm here with Euan Bonner, who is a teacher and researcher at Kanda University of International Studies. And he's working with AR, which is augmented reality, AI, which is artificial intelligence, and VR, which is virtual reality. So, Euan, I'd like to ask you, the first question is, how did you get into this kind of research and teaching?
Wow. Okay. Um, well, basically, what happened was after I finished university, where I studied communications, I moved to Japan because I just love technology. I love big cities, and of course, Tokyo is the biggest and has all the technology. And I worked at Eon, the Eikaiwa Eon, for 7 years while I was doing my master's degree in TESOL. And as soon as I got myself a university lecturer position, I sort of realized that I have a lot of free time during the summer breaks, at least initially. And I decided to teach myself programming and bring along my hobby, which was virtual reality and all those kind of new technologies. And then, yeah, I just sort of found that those two things, teaching English, well, not necessarily teaching English, but linguistics and that kind of field, actually went really well together with virtual reality and programming. And I just sort of went from there. Just started researching ways to mix different ideas for applications and VR together with education.
So let's go on to AI, AR, and VR. So we've got AI, artificial intelligence, AR, augmented reality, and VR, virtual reality. So we know what these terms mean, but like, what are they, and why are they useful for language teachers and language learners? Let's start with
Sure, absolutely.
AI, maybe.
Okay. So I think everybody, as you said, knows that artificial intelligence is intelligence that is artificial. But I always like to think of it as a much more simple thing. It's just machine problem solving.
Hmm.
You have a problem, you put your problem into the machine, and the machine spits out an answer. Um, so anything from a Google search all the way up to advanced sort of, chatbots and things like that. That's all under the umbrella of AI. Um, so what my particular interest with AI is and how it applies to language teaching and language learners is with what we call neural networks. And neural networks are when you, rather than just having a bunch of data in a database, like an Excel sheet where it's just data, 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 neural networks sort of um, put the information into a database and all the different associations that that piece of information might have.
Hmm.
So a good example of that might be if you have the word dog, you don't just put it under the category of pets. Dog can be associated with fur or hair, brown, four legs, barks, woof, old expressions like man's best friend, all of those kind of things. So neural networks allow you to have a much more human-like response from the machine because when you ask a question, it understands the context of what you're asking. It's not
Mm.
just, right, you're asking for dog names. Here are some dog names.
Mm. So
Um,
to
yeah.
draw a line, to draw a line from AI to language learning, what you're saying is it allows computers to understand language better. AI does. Yes.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Now, what we're looking at here on your screen right now is a chatbot that you've developed, isn't it? That uses AI, and I understand that it uses GPT-3, which is
Mm.
a new kind of language model that allows your chatbot to be more human than any previous chatbot. Would that not be an exaggeration?
Well, it's certainly more human than sort of the chatbots that I think that most people are familiar with.
Hmm.
What I'll do is I'll give you a couple of text examples so I
Hmm.
can show you it does work.
Yep, yep,
And then we'll try out the real thing and
yep,
hopefully it works there too. The reason
yep.
I'm a little hesitant is we're in between sessions with the AI right now. So I am doing some changes. And of course, as soon as you make any changes, it becomes a little bit less stable than in the past. So
Hmm.
here's an example. So my coworkers and I, we were testing out Brenda, and since we know her data set only goes to the end of 2019, we knew that she would have no knowledge of the newer Matrix movie that came out,
Hmm.
Matrix 4. So we asked her, what's the plot of Matrix 4? And we knew that she would have to generate that content just based on her prior knowledge of what The Matrix is, the previous three movies, people's sentiments about them. And you can see that here. So she says, I haven't seen it yet. I heard it's a better movie than the third one, which is, as you probably know, if you've seen those Matrix movies, quite a popular sentiment that the third one was not very good. So you can see down here, she actually, if you have seen those movies, she was able to guess quite a few things. She says the car chases were great, and Matrix 4 has car chases. She said she was disappointed with the ending. Quite a few people were disappointed. And then she said she didn't like how it ended with the two people getting together, which is exactly how those movies end. So it's quite a natural little interaction that we had with her. It's all contextual. You notice those questions don't mention the Matrix every single time, but she knows that we're continuing a conversation about the Matrix.
Right, that's important, right? Because it's about discourse. It's discourse level language practice, right? So it has to understand that it's the same discourse, it's the same conversation. Yeah, yeah.
The student holds down a button which sends off the speech to Google to be turned into text. Then the text comes to OpenAI, which understands the text, provides a response, back to Google to be turned into a voice, and then from the voice back to the user. Right, so hopefully this works. So let's just start for normal conversation. Hi, Brenda, what are you doing today?
Could you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
Oh, there we go.
I'm studying Japanese.
There we go. Sorry, my mouse is a little bit twitchy, so need to be careful. Okay, so yeah, hi Brenda, what are you doing? I'm studying Japanese. Okay. Why are you studying Japanese?
I want to become a translator.
Why a translator? Why not something else?
I'm interested in Japanese culture and reading Japanese books.
So in this case, if you remember, the background of Brenda is that she lives in Japan and she's studying Japanese there. So she's making an association between translator and her interest in Japan. So she didn't say it, but she wants to be a Japanese translator.
So she's using the profile that your students gave her to formulate the answers to these questions, basically.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay. So I should clarify at this point, like, this is not an app you can download from the App Store. It's not on Google Play. It's very kind of experimental, early stages kind of development, isn't it, Euan?
Yes, and that kind of gets into the broader topic of everything I make. I really want to release a lot of the things I make, but there's always the rule of when you think you're 80% finished, you're actually 50% finished. The last 20% takes a long time to get through. Yeah. So when this is all done and great, and I'd love people to use it, I'll realize there's still another year ahead of making it good enough for public consumption. Sure.
Okay, we're going to talk briefly about the Metaverse. Now, this might relate more to your AR and VR stuff, which is augmented reality and virtual reality. So, question is your work in any way related to the Metaverse?
Kind of a difficult question in a way, because the Metaverse means so many different things to different people. To give my personal understanding of what the Metaverse is, when you talk about virtual reality and augmented reality, so virtual reality, of course, you're putting on the VR headsets and you're jumping into various different VR sort of experiences, traveling the world, dancing to music, that kind of thing. Or if you're putting on an AR set of glasses, which actually I've got a pair here as well, nice. Which allow you to see 3D objects added into reality. That's not actually the Metaverse. That's just VR and AR. The Metaverse is the interaction between all of those applications. You could think of it almost like how computers were around in the 1980s and then the internet came in the 90s. The Metaverse is like the internet for VR and AR. So if I buy, as Mark Zuckerberg has been talking about, if I buy a hat in one VR application, I want to be able to take that hat into a different VR game or a different VR social space. And that's what the Metaverse is all about, providing tools to allow developers to seamlessly connect all their applications together. That's why if you look at movies like Ready Player One, the main characters move between experiences, but their avatars, their bodies look the same as they move around. Okay. So from my research, there are a lot of independent things that we're working on, and we're sort of looking towards the metaverse and what that will bring in the future, but they're not actually interconnected in any way.
So what we're looking at now on your screen, I think, is a combination. On the left, is it AR? On the right is VR. Would that be correct? Or are they both AR?
Well, the one on the left is a typical AR experience for a smartphone, where you look through the camera of your smartphone, and we've added 3D content into the real world. So you can see that the monkey on top of the box there, and the cup and the plant on the right, those don't exist in reality. You can only see them through the app, just like Pokemon Go. This is an app that I made maybe 5 years ago as a sort of, what do we call that? A self-access tour to our campus, so that you don't need a tour guide. You can just walk around, point your phone at various boxes, and the monkey will start talking about those areas. On the right,
oh, that's great. So the monkey will talk in English about something, and then the student will listen, and maybe later on you'll do kind of a feedback activity with the information they've obtained from the monkey. Like, what did the monkey tell you about something?
The learning help desks, for example. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
On the left, you can see VR there. And this is a social experience where we have an avatar, and they're in VR, and they're talking to each other. They can draw on the whiteboard that you can see behind with the purple and the green pens. And they can even draw in the air. So the idea of this sort of VR experience is that two people who are very distant physically from each other can collaborate and work on discussion topics together, rather than just using Zoom, where it's very static, or maybe you could use a digital whiteboard in Zoom. So it's a little bit more hands-on. The reason I'm a bit reluctant on this one is I kind of combined the two, where on AR, if you wear the AR glasses, you can add a distant person to your physical space. And now this person on the right here looks like they're in the room with you, painting painting in the air.
You've shown us very kindly some AI stuff that you developed yourself, some AR stuff that was developed both by you and other companies, and also some VR stuff. Now, I'm wondering, will these kind of applications become the norm for teaching and learning languages in the near future? So near is the key word there. Are they going to become the norm in the near future, do you think? Okay,
so I might be able to maybe mention, how can I put it? It all depends on what the word near future means. Over the next year or two, it is pretty much, it's almost guaranteed that Apple will finally release its own augmented reality glasses and virtual reality headsets. And they are going to be sort of putting a big push into these kind of things. So I think over the next few years, you're going to slowly start to see smart glasses kind of take off. Whether or not they become popular, we don't know. But if they do, then these sort of interactions where you can look through the glasses and see 3D content are going to start becoming popular enough that your own students in classrooms might start to have them just by default in your language learning classroom. Okay. So over the next 5 to 10 years, you might start to see students who can access this content, okay, guys, go home and access this content in VR, or, okay, everybody, please use your AR glasses to look at this particular app, which will help you with vocabulary. It's all coming soon. But
to jump in, it's not unrealistic to say that VR goggles or AR goggles could become as ubiquitous as smartphones, for example. I mean, in Japan, where we are, pretty much every student has a smartphone, so you can say to them, download this app, and it's not like they have to go out and buy a smartphone. They already have one. So are you saying that the smart glasses will become as ubiquitous as smartphones? Quite likely.
I can't say whether or not it will happen, but from my investigation and from my research, all the big companies are hoping it will. Meta, Apple, and Google are all developing AR glasses and smart glasses, and more or less starting next year is when you'll see a big marketing push. Now, it could be like 3D TV, where nobody wants it, nobody buys it. It's just too much. We don't need all this information in front of our faces. Yeah. Or before you know it, 10 years from now, all the kids treat it as normal and everyone is using them. It's quite possible both ways.
Google have already tried this one time, right? They had Google Glass.
Yes.
I think was released, what would that be, 2010 or before 2010?
2012, 2000, yeah, around about
2012.
then. Yeah, about 10
Okay.
years ago.
And it didn't catch on, I think, partly because of privacy implications. And people were worried about the fact that you could be, people could record you without your knowledge. You know, they're walking around with a pair of glasses on, and they look like normal glasses, and they're recording you. And I think they had a new term which was like glass hole, which is like glasses plus asshole, glass hole, right? So have Google like fix the problems that they had, the public relation problems they had with the first attempt?
So the short answer is no, but the long answer is they're trying two different approaches. One is Google Glass looked terrible as a physical object. It was not fashionable in any way. It had a big piece of literal glass sticking out the side and a very noticeable camera pointing at whoever that person was talking to. So their new strategy is, and you may have seen Meta teaming up with Ray-Ban glasses to make more stylish and more, trendy glasses to make that part more appealing to the customer. And in terms of having basically cameras pointing at you, they have a couple of strategies, but the cameras are essential for the AR to read the world around you so it knows where to put the 3D content. So it's kind of hard to overcome. If you're going to wear smart glasses, you're going to have people being uncomfortable that you have a pair of cameras staring at them. A couple of things I would say about that. One is Meta has made it so that you can't use the glasses cameras without the light being on, and it's impossible to cover cover the light without it being obvious. So that's one strategy they're trying. Okay. Another is to remember we all have cameras on us at all times, and we've seemingly just become used to that.
Now, you mentioned hardware and software. So what kind of hardware and software is required by teachers and students to utilize your tools or similar tools? Now, I think you showed us the Oculus Rift. Can you show us that again?
So actually, technology's moved on a little bit. The Oculus Rift,
sorry.
2016. Now we're into the Oculus Quest or the Oculus Quest 2.
Quest, okay.
But if we want to be even more accurate, remember, Facebook changed its name to Meta. So now it's actually called the Meta Quest 2. So,
Meta Quest 2. Now, how much will the Meta Quest 2 set us back in America, US dollars, do you think?
Oh, I want to say it's $399, but it might be a little bit cheaper. Okay. But basically speaking, Facebook is underselling. What would you call that? They're selling it below cost because they're really trying to get it out into the market.
Oh, it's like a loss leader, like a bit of a loss leader. Okay, okay.
All the competing VR devices cost $800 to $1,000. The Meta Quest 2 is only around about $400, and it can do everything that every other one can do, and sometimes better. So there is only one thing to buy these days if you want advanced VR, and that's the Meta Quest 2.
The Meta Quest 2 could be used for language learning if you're teaching languages online. It could make the interactions more real, couldn't it? And you can basically have virtual objects in front of you. So you could say to someone, drive the car, even though there's no car there.
Yes, that's right. So there are programs, there are a couple of dedicated language learning VR programs like Immerse, and I believe there's a few more that I'm forgetting the name of. I can probably check that in a little bit. Actually, I might have a slide.
Immerse, I think you've worked with Immerse, haven't you? Is it Immerse dot? What's the address?
I believe it's so Immerse.online, which full disclosure, I have been an advisor for Immerse, and I'm doing some research projects using their tools. There are other competing platforms that I should mention as well. But anyway, the point is that these ones allow you to place your students into situations like, okay, now we're at a restaurant and you're ordering food from the fast food counter, or you're in a city. It creates all these 3D environments with physical objects that you can pick up, and you can talk and high five and communicate with people from around the world, all brought together in the same classrooms. But there's more than just dedicated to VR language learning apps. There's also the regular ones like Tilt Brush, where your students can create art.
Oh, hang on a second. So that tilt brush.
Tilt
Okay,
Brush.
tilt brush. Okay.
There's also I forget the name of the free one. There's a free version of Tilt Brush. It might just be called Free Brush, but I think that's wrong.
Okay.
But anyway, there's there are plenty of applications out there. So there's sort of two different ways. One is use a dedicated language learning app like Immerse or like the other ones that unfortunately I've suddenly forgotten the name of. I apologize.
Okay. No worries.
And then there's using regular VR applications in your language classroom, which I've written a few papers on. Using a kitchen in VR because your university or your high school doesn't have a kitchen, so you can't safely practice procedural text.
Or a medical, probably for doctors and nurses, a medical situation, or for pilots, an aviation situation.
Exactly, that's right. So those sort of applications all exist. And a lot of games can be retooled for use inside language learning as well, and any sort of education. Like, for example, here with Tilt Brush, we had our students create visual summaries of the books they read, and then they gave students tours of those visual summaries because you can broadcast the MetaQuest 2 vision to a projector so that students sitting in the classroom can see what the VR user is seeing, so that you can give kind of a first-person tour of whatever you create.
Wow, that is quite amazing. But I mean, I do know teachers who struggle with technology, and they struggle to use a projector, they struggle to use a Windows computer. So I mean, specialist training required to use a lot of these applications, maybe.
Certainly a lot of getting used to, like handing a Macintosh or an Apple Mac to somebody who's only been used to Windows. There is a learning curve there to getting used to it. But to a lot of students or a lot of teachers that might be worried about the cost. I mean, you can't give all your students $400 headsets and also having to learn it yourself. Don't forget that there is still Google Cardboard, those are not to be scoffed at too much. There's some great 360-degree videos. Your students put their smartphones into the Cardboard VR headset. They stick it up against their head, and they can go and visit places around the world and see a video that is in 360 degrees around them. Those are still valuable empathy tools and discussion practice tools that you can use in the language classroom.
So for Google Cardboard, just to clarify, they basically put their smartphone into a cardboard box that has eye holes cut in it. Basically, yes. It's very low tech, isn't it?
With some plastic lenses to make sure that the smartphone is focusable at such a close sort of distance.
Okay. So just to close the loop on the hardware-software question, you recommend probably the Oculus Quest for any VR-type activities, is that right?
Yes, if you're looking to have one or two students, or if you have the money, all of your students have a full VR experience, then the Quest 2 or Meta 2 is the easiest way to do that. It's actually quite drop in and go. There's not a lot to set up.
Okay, and for kind of a not like cheap thrills, but a low cost entry point, Google Cardboard is going to cost you what, $10 you said, or something there?
Yeah, you can find them as cheap as $2 each if you buy them in bulk. I know a teacher that's buying a class set of 50 right now, and that didn't cost her very much money at all. Maybe $150 for 2 classes worth. You of course will burn through them quite quickly. You only get a few uses out of them, but it is quite affordable to buy quite a lot of them.
Okay, so I mean, teachers often do like listening logs, or they'll do like, sometimes they'll do video logs. You could do a VR log. You could say to students, go to YouTube, find a VR experience, and then write about it. And that's how we would draw the line back to language learning there for the VR experiences, maybe.
Yes, exactly. In addition to that, I've had teachers use it as sort of a discussion starting empathy tool. Okay, everybody, let's talk about world religions today. Today, let's talk about Islam. There's a 360-degree video of visiting Mecca. Let's go and take part in the Hajj. And then after that, let's discuss, how did you feel? What did you see? Did that change your impression of this kind of content? And it's a really good sort of engaging tool, because the students can pop in, pop out, and then talk about what they all shared in that same experience.
So it's a situated or situational language learning where you're saying to students, look, if you want to learn a language, you have to use immersion. You have to go to a country. But here we're saying, okay, you're going to go to a country, but you're not leaving the classroom to do it. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask everyone who talks about AI and VR and AR, and that is, are these technologies a threat or an opportunity for human language teachers? In other words, do we have a reason to worry about our jobs?
Well, my sort of optimistic answer about that is not really. I find that AI and in particular also AR take away a lot of the mundane parts of teaching. And they also, for language learners, it gives them sort of a quick start. It gets them over that initial hurdle. And I'll talk about that in two parts. So for the learner, if you're using a smartphone with Google Translate on it, or smart glasses that will automatically translate what you see in front of you or conversations that you hear, that's not enough to do a 6-month homestay in another country or to do a business negotiation. But it sure helps getting from the airport to the hotel and ordering food at a restaurant. If you have access to AI that can do live subtitles in front of your eyes or translating a menu by pointing your phone at it, it really helps get over that initial hurdle. But if you want to talk to people, if you want to form connections and you want to empathize, AI is got a huge hill to climb if it wants to translate live and also translate nuance, culture, and empathy within that. So I don't see our jobs being gobbled up by that kind of AI. It just gives people a little bit of a kickstart when they get started on their language education. And just to finish on the second part, for the teacher, the advanced AI like OpenAI and GPT-3 that I mentioned, instead of, imagine an activity. Okay, I want to create 20 individualized creative story prompts for my students so that all of their narrative writing they do in my language class isn't the exact same story 20 times, but I don't have time to create 20 different ideas. Well, get the AI to do it. Literally, if you type into OpenAI, generate 20 different narrative ideas about this topic, it'll do that for you. And then, okay, great, I've got 20 ideas, hand those out. Okay, moving on to something else. It's a time saver.
It's quite scary how good it is actually, and
yes.
I was contacted recently by a teacher on Facebook who said he'd used AI to help the students to create creative writing. So the AI would write a paragraph, and then the student would write a paragraph, and the AI would write a paragraph, and the student would write a paragraph. So it really helped them to. I mean, the worry is that students will simply use AI to do the whole thing, and then hand it in as if they had written it themselves.
And that's that's going to get much more challenging as the years go on. I've tried that out myself. I've taken 20 student essays and given it to the AI and said, okay, use this, build on this, create your own from it. And I'd say it got close enough in the same way that when a student Google translates something from Japanese into English and then just hands that in, you can still tell. But yeah, maybe 10 years from now, it's going to be very difficult to tell. You might need to use AI to tell if something used AI. That might be the tool that the teacher has to use.
And suddenly we get into the kind of singularity Terminator situation where the AI is battling itself,
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any this is the last question actually, this is great. Okay, so are there any other aspects of your work that you would like to share with our audience today in the next 5 minutes?
Okay, well, I'll try and be quick, and I hope not to overload everyone, but a couple of things that I've been working on that I might mention. This one is the closest to release, but it's still, I'd say maybe a year away, is it's an AR app that I built, to be honest, 5 years ago. It's just taken a long time because I'm a researcher. I don't have time to work on it full time. But the idea is our students have to read graded readers. And there are so many graded readers, and it's really hard to know which ones are good for them, which ones do other students recommend. So I decided to make an app that if you point the app at a graded reader, it will instantly tell you what other students think of it. And if you tap your finger on the graded reader, it will bring up book reviews, comments, and star ratings written by the students that have read it in the past. And I just thought that this was a valuable tool because if I have 50 graded readers, I don't have time to type those names into Google and see what people around the world think. So if I just start dropping them onto the table one after the other, I can start seeing what other students think of instantly. And when I get to one that looks interesting and has a high enough star rating, I can touch on that and get more details about what the other students think.